Okay, so NB Jolly, you were asking about the coming update. I'm going to assume that you mean the Abyssal changes. If you want to hear about some other aspects, just say so. But I'll lead with the Abyssal changes. So, you know, a few weeks back, yeah, the Abyssal changes. Okay, so a few weeks back, there was a slide that mentioned, and I'll caveat, I don't spend a lot of time on Reddit and in the forums. I never really spent a lot of time on e-forums, but there was a slide that said that CCP wanted to address running high tier in high sec. No other real information. Then we had Eve Vegas, which said that they wanted to, again, I believe it was mainly, you know, address it, but without it being too punishing. And what was proposed in the last few days, or what was shared in the last few days, was, you know, people were concerned that if you ran high tier and high sec, it would have gone back to the days of you get a suspect status, which, I mean, understandably could be, I mean, it's an interesting, I'm at a different spot on my character. I mean, to me, that's an interesting challenge to work around. And, you know, do you risk running suspect status? Or do you risk, you know, running a nullsec or whatever? As a solo pilot, that's an interesting challenge. But what they released, or what is proposed, is if you want to run tier 6, let me back up. Nobody can run Abyssals in 0.9 or 1.0 security status space, which ultimately, that's probably a good change. I mean, so if I wanted to run this retribution right in JITA, that's decent ISK per hour without ever leaving the trade hub. Without getting too far into that argument, I do very much believe it's good that we have people out in space, even if it's, you know, taking this retribution around and moving it gate to gate, because you're more likely to have something happen to it. So no one will be able to run in 0.9 and 1.0. It'll also help get some of the newer pilots out of JITA, and kind of that Ganker's paradise for opportunistic ganks. If you want to run, so that'll put you in 0.8 without a suspect status. If you want to run tier 4 without a suspect status, you will go to 0.7 systems. If you want to run tier 5 without suspect, that'll be 0.6, and then tier 6 without suspect will be 0.5. So first Overmind of the night, and we got a speed cloud, so I'm not going to bother with the camera, we're just going to go to Overmind. And we'll lead after. I'm going to over-rep here just because I'm talking, but... so yeah, and I know some people were concerned with, you know, well, I'm in a lower sec status and I'm running an expensive fit, it's easier to gank me. And we haven't even touched the ganker changes yet. For the most part, if you were in a fit, so we'll use my Ikitursa. I run an Ikitursa, I've streamed that Ikitursa, which is worth over 10 billion. If you are worth ganking, no change is going to really stop that. And sec status doesn't matter, because howitzers get to vote first. And obviously there are steps that I can take to mitigate that risk, and I do take those steps. Even if somebody's on grid with me, there are steps you can take. But you're never going to completely shake that. So for the most part, if you were running an expensive high tier setup, that's not really going to affect you. People will need to learn how to move high tier setups similar to, I mean, I don't know enough about the incursion community, but just moving expensive assets around and doing it, you know, being smart about it. The other thing, with the changes to criminal status, which if you're not tracking, basically if you have criminal status, you can't tether, or you can't get tether rights in high sec, and then and I'm probably misquoting it. So if you're in chat and you remember the exact text, feel free to jump in and correct me. But basically, if you are a prolific ganker and have horrible sex status, you're not going to be able to dock at a station in a ship either. So that will change kind of the landscape for what I would again call opportunistic ganks. What I would say is if you're running tier 6 in a 0.5 or any of these, don't do it next to a 0.4 or a low sec entryway. I was talking briefly with Mr. Unlucky about it because I'm very interested. I'd never spent a lot of time high sec ganking myself, but there's actually a lot of logistics that goes into it, which is, it's true for a lot of the game. And just kind of thinking about how people would do it. So it'd be interesting to see how, people will figure out a way. But same is true as it was before the proposed changes. If you take steps to make yourself harder to target than, the people who are still going to run within 3 jumps of Jita, then you have removed a significant portion of the risk for running high tier abyssals. Does that kind of answer or address what you're interested to hear about? The short version for me is I think it's a good change.